Welcome to the 3-on-3 basketball captains meeting. Please remember that you must have 3 players on your roster by the end of registration in order to be scheduled for the league. As a captain, you have numerous responsibilities that contribute to everyone's enjoyment of the intramural program. The first and most important is that you understand all rules and policies and that you relay that information to your team members prior to competition. In the remainder of this video, we will review some of the basics of the program. However, should you have any questions or concerns, please email us at imsports@stolaf.edu. Remember that intramurals is a college-sponsored activity. Therefore, the administrative staff reserves the right to change any team name for any reason. Additionally, if a team name violates the college's code of conduct, the students involved may be charged by the dean's office. In most sports, during registration, you will have the option to set up time preferences for your team. When scheduling, we do our best to accommodate those preferences. However, it may not always be possible. If your team needs to make a schedule change, you must give at least 3 business days written notice for the reschedule to be considered. As with most things, the more notice you give, the better chance we will be able to accommodate. When games are canceled due to weather, we will look at the facility time and space available and do our best to make up those games. However, reschedules are never guaranteed. Your team's roster is an important responsibility for you as the team captain. For one thing, only players on the printed roster are eligible to play for your team in playoffs, so it is paramount that you get everybody added to the roster. Adding players to a roster is a 2-part process. First, you need to invite the players to the team on IM Leagues. Second, your teammates must accept the invitation by signing the electronic waiver. If a player is not on the roster, they can still sub or be added to the score sheet on site. However, they will need to present their student ID card to do so. Additionally, no team can have more than 2 club or varsity athletes in the same or a related sport. The rationale for this policy is to ensure that intramurals remains recreational in nature. If your team has questions or concerns about this policy, or would like an exception made, please email us. On game day, your team will have 5 minutes past the start time to get the minimum number of players checked in to play. Once the 5 minutes have passed, the game will be called a forfeit and a loss for that team. For check-in, please remember that each player is required to initial next to their name. When a player initials, they are signing an agreement to some extent, so players should not be initialing for their teammates. As a captain, you may delegate your on-site duties to a teammate. These duties include the pre-game meeting with the officials, other communication with the intramural staff, and verifying the score at the end of each game. When checking into play, all players must present some form of ID. If the player is listed on the roster, the intramural staff will accept anything with their name and picture on it. This could be their St. Olaf ID card, a driver's license, or even a social media profile. However, if the player is not listed on the roster, that player must present their St. Olaf ID. There will be no exceptions to this policy to ensure that all participants are affiliated with the college. In intramural sports, there's nothing worse than showing up for your weekly contest only to find out that the opposing team will not be able to play. For this reason, it is your responsibility as a captain to inform the intramural office if your team needs to forfeit. This should be done by 5 p.m. or 2 hours prior to the game time, whichever is earliest. Your team will still be credited with a loss, but it will not count as a forfeit. This is important for playoff qualification purposes. Sportsmanship is of utmost importance in intramural sports. It is vital that all players are respectful of other participants, spectators, staff, and the facilities. Only the captain should be discussing decisions or calls with the officials, and this must be done in a respectful manner. Remember that our officials are students, just like you, and they will make mistakes. However, incorrect calls do not justify verbal abuse, harassment, or threats towards the intramural staff. Thus, That type of behavior will not be tolerated. At the end of each season, a playoff bracket will be offered to crown the season's champion. The amount of facility time will determine how many teams will make the playoffs. At the discretion of the intramural staff, teams who have forfeited or had discipline issues may be disqualified from the playoffs. Remember that teams cannot add players or utilize subs during playoffs. The intramural program will cancel outdoor games due to weather when field conditions are poor or safety is at a higher risk. For indoor sports, games will only be canceled if the weather causes the college or the facility to shut down for the time. When these issues occur, cancellation decisions will be made by 3 p.m. on the day of the game. Captains will be contacted via email or phone when time allows. If decisions are made last minute, the intramural staff may email all players directly. For questions and concerns regarding the program, our contact information is listed below. Email or phone is preferred for most issues. Should you need an in-person meeting, we suggest you email or call first to set up an appointment. Moving on to the 3-on-3 basketball rules. While the game is played 3-on-3, teams may begin the game with 2 players. But remember, you must have at least 3 players on the roster before the end of registration in order to be scheduled for the league. As far as equipment goes, players may not wear any equipment that the intramural staff deems a safety concern. This includes, but is not limited to, jewelry, hard-brimmed hats, and hard casts. Teams are required to wear similar color jerseys, however, numbers are not necessary for 3-on-3. The intramural staff will provide pennies should teams not provide their own. 3-on-3 matches are played to the best of 3 games, with the first 2 games being played to 15 points. The third game, if necessary, will be played to 11 points, and each game must be won by 2. There is a 40-minute time limit per match. Once the 40 minutes are up, the game ends and the score is final. For scoring, shots that are made from inside the 3-point line are worth 1 point, and shots made from outside the 3-point line are worth 2 points. There are no free throws in 3-on-3. Since the game is played half court with no officials, there are different rules for putting the ball in play. To put the ball in play, the offensive player must check the ball to the defender. Once they receive the ball back, the offensive player must pass the ball to a teammate to put the ball in play. After a score, the non-scoring team will put the ball in play from outside the 3-point line. There is an exception involving and one fouls that we will discuss later. On a change of possession during play, the ball must be cleared to the 3-point line. This includes defensive rebounds and turnovers. Lastly, jump balls are awarded to the defense. The defense is defined as the team that would need to clear the ball next if they were to gain possession. For example, if Team A gets a defensive rebound and there is a jump ball before Team A can clear the ball, then Team A is awarded possession. Again, there are no officials for 3-on-3 basketball, so players are expected to display integrity and sportsmanship while participating. Only players actively participating in the game may make calls regarding the game. For foul calls, only the player who fouls or who is fouled can make the call. When a foul is called, the team that was fouled will take possession of the ball for a check. This includes a shooting foul in which the basket is made, in which case the points count as well. Additionally, if the defender makes the foul call and there is a discrepancy of whether the player was shooting, the foul is a shooting foul. For violations, such as out of bounds or traveling, any player who sees it may make the call. If disputes occur, players may choose any reasonable method of resolving those, such as shooting for it or rock, paper, scissors. While the intramural rules and participation manual clarify some questions that may occur, anything not explicitly stated will follow the National Federation of High School Rules book. Thank you for reviewing this captain's meeting, and remember to take the quiz to get credit for this meeting. Have a great season.